Well, hello, and a warm welcome back to another week on my allotment. Haven't posted for 2 weeks. I was up here last Sunday, but everything was frozen. Nothing could be done. So I came up, I had a fire, I read a couple of the kitchen garden magazines, mooched about a bit and went home. Because of course we had my eldest son and his partner Nikki staying with us for 3 weeks. They went off to Taiwan to meet her parents. Yesterday I took them to Heathrow. David's never met the parents, so that'll be interesting. And from what I've seen, Taiwan is a beautiful country. So I think David will enjoy the time he's got there. He then has to go back to Canada to go back to work, but Nikki is staying with her parents for another month, which will be nice for them. Anyway, we had a wonderful time with them. They went off with a hire car and saw Oxford, Cambridge, Stonehenge, all sorts of things. Went back down to see my mother. So it was a lovely time. That's over now, and we refocus on our lives moving into the spring and whatever that brings. So on the plot, you'll have seen me bring up the trays, or a tray of garlic. I've got 4 trays of garlic. In the week, the golf is busy. In the week I planted some in the ground here. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but I've done it, and I've got more to do today, and that's really it. Again, when I got here after work in the week, I got the hoe out and got that agitating the beds as I do every winter, trying to keep the soil friable and not compacted on the surface. So that's kept me mildly busy. So you're very welcome. We haven't had rain for a couple of weeks now. So the plot is unusually dry for the middle of winter, which is a pleasant state of affairs. The rain is due to come back this week, so we'll be back to the normal situation. But while it's lasted, it's been very pleasant. It has enabled me to get a lot of work done, which this time of year, when work is scarce, has been good. So, welcome along. I've got a brew sat here. I'm going to finish it, and then I might come out of the very warm shed and do something. Well, the keen-eyed amongst you will have noticed there's one job I've done since I last saw you. A lot of manure. Finished off that bed with cardboard to suppress the couch grass. Job done. This is my little fig, and there are some embryonic figs on them. Whether they survive these cold frosts we're having, I'm not sure, but other than that it looks okay. And here's an example of what I'm talking about when I say I just agitate the surface with the hoe, cut off the weeds as they start to develop, and keep the surface crumbly. I do think it helps dispel or absorb the water as it rains. Anyway, the other thing, more importantly, it looks nice to my eye. So this week I've done this bed and that bed. Chopped off all the weeds and got the soil into a crumble. Can't wait for the beginning of March to see what's under that drum with the rhubarb. We do get a very sweet picking of that. Something to look forward to. One of the first crops of the year. My daughter has been rereading How Not to Die by Michael Greger, which I think should be compulsory reading on the school syllabus. And if you have a child or grandchild or anyone in your life who is suffering chronic disease, one of the best things you can do for them is give them this book, and then they can cure themselves and they don't have to go through the trauma of a useless healthcare system. And I thought, Charlotte's rereading it, and it's re-motivating her and Carl to get better with their diet, exercise, etc. And I've been doing the same. It triggered me to do it. And I know I've read this before, but like Charlotte, like Carl and like myself, it does you good every now and again just to reread things and just remind yourself of how you should be doing things. And the introduction, this book is dedicated to his grandmother. And I just want to read a very, very short introduction, the paragraph that introduces the book. And I just think it's very, very powerful. And if you're suffering any kind of chronic disease, and if you're over 65, you almost certainly are, because that's the way we live. I think this might be useful. So bear with me and see if it inspires you. I was only a kid when the doctors sent my grandmother home in a wheelchair to die. Diagnosed with end-stage heart disease, she had already had so many bypass operations that the surgeons essentially ran out of plumbing. The scarring from each open heart surgery had made the next more difficult until they finally ran out of options. Confined to a wheelchair with crushing chest pain, her doctors told her there was nothing else they could do. Her life was over at age 65. I think what sparks many kids to want to become doctors when they grow up is watching a beloved relative become ill or even die. But for me, it was watching my grandmother get better. Soon after she was discharged from the hospital to spend her last days at home, a segment aired on 60 Minutes about Nathan Pritikin. I'm guessing 60 Minutes is a documentary in America. Nathan Pritikin, an early lifestyle medicine pioneer who had been gaining a reputation for reversing terminal heart disease. He had just opened a new centre in California, and my grandmother, in desperation, somehow made the cross-country trek to become one of its first patients. There was a live-in program where everyone was placed on a plant-based diet and then started on a graded exercise regimen. They wheeled my grandmother in and she walked out. I'll never forget that. She was even featured in Pritikin's biography, Pritikin, the Man Who Healed America's Heart. My grandma was described as one of the death's door people. Francis Greger from North Miami, Florida, arrived in Santa Barbara at one of Pritikin's early sessions in a wheelchair. Mrs. Greger had heart disease, angina, and claudication. Her condition was so bad she could no longer walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, though, she was not only out of her wheelchair, but was walking 10 miles a day. If you just think about that, within 3 weeks of end-stage heart disease, stuck in a wheelchair with chronic pain, within 3 weeks, and all she did was eat different food, and lots of it. Within 3 weeks, she was walking 10 miles. Not 3 months, not 3 years. Now imagine if that was a pill. You'd hear nothing else in the press. It would be game changer, life changing, stunning new medication. But because there's no money in it, nobody's ever heard of it. Just, I won't read anymore because, I'll bore you. I just don't think you can emphasise enough how drastic that change is. So if you're sat there with any kind of chronic disease, that lady was going to die and she was in a wheelchair, and within 3 weeks she was walking 10 miles a day. And she went on to live another 30 years. 30 years. She died at 96. Words, well, they don't fail me, they never do, but like I say, if that was a pill, wow, if that was a pill, wow. It'll be on BBC, it'll be front page, and that was back in the 70s, and we've known about it for all those years. Anyway, it inspires me. I hope it does you. All my pots that are scattered around the plot, I'm not really sure what's in any of them, but obviously here I can see some hyacinths coming up. That again came from one of my customers who said throw those on the compost heap, and I said, well, I can find a home for those. Looking forward to seeing them flower, as with all the others which have mostly daffodils coming up. The strawberry plants really do look quite ragged at this time of the year, but even in the worst looking, in the centre of each plant you can see green life. And I have mentioned it numerous times that this has been my best ever crop of Brussels sprouts, and we've still got lots of them to eat. Fantastic. I've got to take some home tonight or today for our Sunday dinner. Looking forward to them. I love them. Absolutely wonderful. And this year I grew, or last year I grew, a nice crop of Cavolo Nero kale. They've serviced our smoothies all through the winter because we're trying to get rid of all the fruit in the freezers, which I think we've just about managed now. But this little beauty, which came from a cutting from Bridget's plot, is one of those perennial kales. So if we move, that will be going with me, so we'll have kale all year round off this one plant. Perennial crops really are the best option. I've decided the garlic is going in this bed because it's the driest on the plot. So you can see I have already planted quite a few. Put some slug pellets down in the naive hope that that would prevent any slug damage. And I've got the rest here to plant, so let's get on with it. Well, there you have it. That's a significant moment, and I might have got this badly wrong, and they may all end up being eaten or not growing, but that's a complete bed of thermodrome garlic sown on the 1st of October, with the exception of this final row here, which is Rose de Lautrec. We bought the cloves at the Malvern Autumn Show from a specialist grower, so they should do well. We'll see. I will update you on their progress. And I have a few left, and I'm going to put those in that bed there. Right, I was down looking. Bush Market in Kabul, named after George W. Bush, sells food and supplies stolen from US military bases. When the British invaded Afghanistan in 1839, they brought 300 camel loads of wine. I think 300 is cutting it fine. Camels have 3 sets of eyelids and 8 sets of eyelashes. Crocodiles' faces are 10 times more sensitive than human fingertips. Alligators' penises are permanently erect but concealed inside their bodies. Probably best to say nothing. Squirrels forget... oh, I can see what they've done here. There's a link. Squirrels forget where they've buried 3/4 of their nuts. The most common place to hide household valuables is in the sock drawer. This is also the first place that burglars check. The world's most expensive car, a 1957 Ferrari Testarossa, was sold in 2011 for £10,750,000. The world's largest producer of cigarettes is the Chinese government. And if you're a smoker, here's one for you. Urea, the main ingredient in urine, is added to cigarettes to enhance their flavour. Lovely. Tobacco companies use kitty litter to make cigars bigger. At the age of 10, Pharaoh Ramesses II was a captain in the army and had his own harem. A bronze in kayaking is Togo's only Olympic medal, won in 2008 by a man who had only been to Togo once. Restaurants were originally meat soups for restoring strength, hence the name restaurant, restoring. Isn't that quite interesting? I've also spent a little bit of money. Obviously you can see my seed potatoes, so that's Charlotte, Rocket, not grown that one before, first early, and then Java, a main crop. I do need more main crop, but I've got some. And then I've bought 3 of these. They are Dahlia collections, 3 different tubers, 3 different colours, specifically bred for cutting flowers. So yeah, 3 of those. They'll go in different beds to create cutting flowers for the house. Now hopefully they'll be at the new place, but if not, I won't need to start these off until April, and we'll know by then whether it's been successful or not. And if it's not, they'll go in the ground here. But quite excited about those. They're not cheap, £10 each. And you don't always have 100% success with Dahlia tubers, but we shall see. I've taken the risk. I have mentioned before that I've purchased Charles Dowding's calendar for 2025, and it's up in my little study in the house. But interestingly, there is nothing, he sows nothing in January. And I'm going to follow his calendar this year as closely as I can. So he sows not a single thing in January. February, there's a couple of things he sows. Now, having said that, I have sown some onion seeds back in the gap between Christmas and New Year. They're on the windowsill in the kitchen. I've had modest germination, not great. And in the greenhouse, I did have garlic, but the garlic is now all in the ground up here. And I've got broad beans and onion sets, and that's it. So I've got a few cabbages that have overwintered, but there's very little in the way of crops. I am cropping the Cavolo Nero kale, Brussels sprouts. Yeah, that's it. All our leeks were dug up and have been frozen, and we are now in the serious, determined mode of eating all the vegetables in our 6 freezers to try and empty them, ready for the move should it happen. The fruit is all but gone, but we've still got 5 freezers full of vegetables. Anyway, so you know, it's all going well here on the plot, and of course with our potential move, the only way I can work this year is to hope for the best and hope that March, April time we may be moving, but plan for the worst. And the worst case scenario for us is that the sale falls through in some way and that I end up on the plot for the year. And so that's what I'm planning for. So the plot is ready, completely ready for the growing season ahead. All the beds have been top dressed. There's very few weeds around. Those weeds that are there I'm not too fussed about. All the tubs for the potatoes, the carrots, they've all been filled with compost and weeded. Everything is ready. And of course, if the sale falls through, I will be rebuilding all those compost heaps, and I've got all the wood to do that on site. So whatever this year holds for us, and I am both excited and nervous about it all, whatever it holds, we're ready for it. We've got the hot bin in the back garden, and I've done a review of that on a previous video a couple of years ago. Well, of course, when I bought the hot bin, it was flat packed. I took it into the back garden, I assembled it, and it's down the bottom of the garden, and it's a wonderful bit of kit. The hot bin, the Aero hot bin, is the best bit of kit I have ever bought for gardening, by a long stretch. But of course, it's now assembled, and we have a back door into the garden, and it wouldn't go through it. So luckily, yesterday, before David was whisked off to Heathrow, he helped me to lift it up onto the garage roof and then to lower it down onto the driveway, so that's got to come up here at some point. If the sale falls through, I've got to reverse that process, so I haven't got David here anymore, so I don't quite know how I'll do that. Anyway, yeah, the plot is all ready for whatever happens. So thank you to all those who've joined me, and well done if you've got through this far. I should be around next weekend, but you know, for the next month or so I'll probably only post every 2 weeks, because there simply isn't that much going on. Anyway, I'll see. I'll post when I've got something to post. I hope your gardens and allotments are ready for the season ahead, and I look forward to the next time I'm with you. Until then, look after yourselves, take care, bye for now.